Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Roya.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Mr. Kalexty.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. All right, that brings us to the Personnel Committee. Councilor Calixte.
Thank you, Council President. The Personnel Committee has on 3 items on the agenda for tonight. The first item is the nomination of Joshua Hunter for appointment to the Public Arts Advisory Board for a term from March 21st to March 21st to July 31st of 2023. And the second item is the nomination of Heather Values for appointment to the City Revitalization and Improvement Zone Authority for a term from June 6, 2022 to January 6, 2027. And the third and last item on our agenda for tonight is the nomination of Christine Connolly for the appointment to the City Revitalization and Improvement Zone Authority for a term from May 1st, 2022 to January 6th, 2024. That's what we have for tonight on our agenda, Mr. President.
Excellent. Would you like to move and second those?
Yes. Now I would like to make a motion to move these nominations to our agenda for next council meeting.
Second.
And yes, all in favors?
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Kalexty, we have,
You can give them the opportunity to address council.
All right. So thank you. I believe that Heather is here tonight with us. Would you please come forward?
Good evening, Council. So I just thought I'd take a minute quick to introduce myself for those of you that may not know me, as well as some others. And hi, Mayor. I'm Heather Valutis. I'm the Vice President right now at the Lancaster Chamber. I've been there, it'll be 11 years in July. And so I've spent many years working downtown pre-COVID. Now I work sometimes remote, most times downtown. But excited about the opportunity with the CRIZ through the funding opportunities that came about actually as a result of the COVID funds. I was able to work closely with Marshall and the team and a lot of the businesses in the CRIZ and really get more familiar with them, more familiar with some of their needs, understand those businesses a little bit better. And so that was a real learning opportunity to learn about those businesses that specifically identify within the CRIZ and kind of the work that they're doing. So excited about the opportunity and happy to answer anything anybody might want to know.
All right. So what are your goals, during your term?
On the CRIZ?
Yeah. What do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I hope to be a support for the work that the CRIZ is trying to advance and ensuring that the businesses that are a part of the CRIZ kind of understand what that means for them, but then also what it means for revitalization within the city and support the work that they're doing. There's some pieces that I still need to learn in terms of their operations and what all the board is called to do versus kind of how the CRIZ presents publicly, but happy to lean in and engage to that as well.
All right. And why do you want to serve on the board?
Yeah, so
What's the
I
main
mean,
reason?
I'm a part of a number of initiatives that take place across the county, but also within the city. And certainly from our perspective as the chamber, supporting businesses, understanding their needs, and really helping them advance and prosper for themselves and for their employees is core to kind of the work that I do in our organization. I have responsibility for our advocacy and government affairs initiatives, our programs and events, and then also our strategic plan. And so really those kind of 3 pieces align nicely with supporting businesses in the CRIZ as well.
Oh, thank you. Is there any questions from other member of the committee?
Counselor?
Heather, hi. Thank
Hi.
you so much for being here this
Yeah.
evening. Not a question, but just a thank you for being willing to serve in this really important board for us. And obviously, your professional career complements it well. And it is, I'm glad to see you serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Thank you, Heather, for your willingness to serve, and I look forward to working with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to
Thank
be here
you.
tonight.
Yep. Thank you all.
And I believe that Joshua is here tonight with us. Would you please come forward?
Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua Hunter. I am Director of Christmas Addicts Community Center, a program of Community Action Partnership. I've been in this role for a year. I've served in the Southeast in other capacities. Right now, some things that I know to be true is that, art is just more than pictures. It's also the food, the culture, the musicians, the poets, and I just want to have the opportunity for other folks to see folks that look like them. Representation matters, and it's with hopes that I'm able to bridge some of those community gaps, and people are more willing to come to the board and express some of their concerns, but also provide some education as well. So.
Thank you, and I appreciate your willingness to serve, but I would like to know what motivates you to continue serving the community.
I think the thing that most motivates me is knowing that people that look like me have a seat at the table as well, knowing that their voices matter, and that that I'm hopefully that bridge stander in between where folks are able to come up and say, hey, listen, I don't think this is going well, but letting them know that that we hear them, but also it's one thing to hear, but it's also the next thing to do is take those action steps to make sure that they're valued.
And what would you like to accomplish during your term in this position?
For me, it's really just building back some of that trust within the community, and just really just having some of those conversations and providing some of that education.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the member of the committee?
Mayor,
Go ahead, please.
what kind of art idea are you looking to have display, or especially since you are working with children, that they can make and put out there to make it nice and exciting for them?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's not going into places and spaces and saying this is what I think we should have. I think it's really listening to some of those voices and letting the people that are in that space really take ownership of it. So for me, it's really that listening part. While I have 100 ideas of the things that I would like to see, it's really listening to folks and letting some of those kids be creative in some of those spaces.
Thank you so much.
Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you, please. Go ahead.
Just one comment. I also sit on the Public Advisory Board, and I look forward to working with you in crafting that our goals are for the future. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the committee or from council as a whole? No? Okay, thank you so much, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe, excuse me, Mr. President, I don't know if Christine is here tonight with us. Christine,
No.
Is Christine here?
Good evening, Council. Marshall Snively. Tonight I'm wearing my CRIS Authority hat. I just wanted to come in on behalf of Christine Connolly. She could not make it today, but she is very interested in this role, and we'll ensure that she gets here for full City Council if you have questions for her.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Heather, Joshua, thank you so much for putting yourselves forward. We appreciate it, and pass our thanks to Christine, of course, who is also welcome to come to next Tuesday's meeting if she is available. All right, thank you, Counselor Calixte. That brings us to the Finance Committee, Counselor Bakay.
Thank you very much, Council President. The Finance Committee, this evening, we have one item on the agenda. It's Administration Bill Number 11, 2022, appropriating American Rescue Plan Act funds for revenue replacement. Patrick Hopkins is going to be speaking with us about this, but this goes back to the final rule issuance that came after our initial appropriation in December.
Thanks, Councilor Bakay. So, as Councilor Bakay said, there was a change from the interim final rule that was issued by U.S. Treasury about this particular aspect of the American Rescue Plan Act. In the ordinance that was adopted by City Council in conjunction with the budget last year was based on the calculation for revenue loss under ARPA, which was based on the comparison between 2020 audited revenues and 2019 audited revenues. And the basis of the calculation is, for the revenue loss, was an assumption that anything less than a 4.1% increase in the revenues between 2020 versus 2019 was determined to be revenue loss. And so City council adopted an ordinance, a supplemental appropriation ordinance that allocated $159,776 as that revenue loss calculation. Those funds were then recognized as 2021 revenue. Then in January or January, I guess, late January, U.S. Treasury issued the final rule, and they changed the calculation after, helpfully, a month and a half after we did our own calculation, and actually everybody else did their calculations. They changed the revenue loss basis from 4.1% to 5.2%. So anything under a 5.2% growth factor was deemed to be revenue loss. So we had Mayor Dussel, just like they did back in December, go back and do the recalculation based on that 5.2%, what they call a counterfactual number. And now the revenue loss calculation was in total was $4,084,666. So the difference, and this is what's referenced in the ordinance that's in front of you, the difference is $924,890. So essentially, because of that interim final rule to final rule presented by U.S. Treasury, we're presenting you with a revised revenue loss calculation. This would be deemed as 2021 revenue. The audit is going on right now. So the accounting office, under the guidance of Mayor Dussel, has booked this entry in anticipation of City Council approving. If City Council would not approve, then we would simply reverse that entry. We had to have the entry in the books during the audit process for this to be deemed 2021 revenue. So ultimately, what this is really doing is just increasing the revenue loss draw from American Rescue Plan Act funds for 2021 for just under $925,000.
And Mr. Hopkins, just a quick question on this. So we know that this number, this percentage changed, so that everyone understands, this percentage will not change going forward. This is
Right.
this is the amount.
Yes,
For the life of ARPA.
each of the 4 years of the revenue loss calculation, now 5.2% will be the number.
Great. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the members of the Finance Committee? Or members of council?
If I may, I have one question. When you say that if we don't move forward with this and it's just a reversal of entry, can you explain that a little bit more? Because I mean, that's
Sure.
$1 million difference.
Our 2021 audit is ongoing right now. There is a point in time, and I guess we've passed it, where entries that were not completed during the course of the audit wouldn't be accepted They obviously have to close the books, get everything completed. So we had them, we had the accounting do this entry as if the $925,000 additional draw on ARPA funds was going to be completed. That is pending city council approval. If city council would not approve the ordinance, then they would just reverse that entry, and we would effectively lose the opportunity to make that draw on ARPA funds as 2021 revenue. The way this calculation works is that 2019 revenues are the baseline. So the first calculation compared 2020 revenues to 2019. The next calculation will be comparing 2021 revenues to 2020 revenues. There'll be another revenue loss calculation there, again, based on a 5.2% growth factor.
And then one follow-up, if this is approved and we are seeing an increase of the $900,000, does that take away from any of the other set-asides that are available through the ARPA funds?
No. There are really the only allocations thus far that have been made are the $5 million for affordable housing and the use of the funds for the purchase of the Oyster Point property, which we intend to pay back through bond issuance at a future date.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Counselor Walsh. Any other questions or comments from council or the public? Hearing none, I'll make a motion then to move this bill forward to our agenda for Tuesday, May 10th for a first reading.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Council President, that concludes the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Councilor Bakay. We go then to the Community Planning Committee. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. We have one item on the agenda, the Administration Resolution 45, amending the Act 537 Official Sewage Facility Plan to include 35 Eric Road development. I do know that Douglas is not here, but a little bit of information on this project. Oak Tree Development received conditional final land development on April 20th, 2022 for a proposed three-story, 37,250 square foot medical office building at 35 Eric Road. The medical office tenant has not been announced, but the facility is expected to receive non-emergency ambulance transport for specialized medical procedures and will have more than 125 employees working there daily during typical business hours. This development is part of a larger City Gate office development located near Dillerville Road and Fruitville Pike, which was previously approved and is partly built out. Building number 1 is outstanding for construction. The sewage plan, we've done, countless numbers of these, and the municipalities are required to develop and implement comprehensive plans that address sewage disposal needs now and in the future, and they're basically to prevent overflow to prevent hazardous waste and health hazards and things of that nature. And I don't know if there's anybody out there that wants to add anything to that, but that's all I have.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Craig. I think you summed up all the important points. Just wanted to simply add that the sewer planning module affirms that there's sewer capacity for this new development. Our planning staff and our stormwater staff analyze this to ensure that that capacity is present. In this case, we are in good shape. Just appreciate the description. The last thing I would add is that this particular development sits on a parcel, as Councilor Craig described. It's off of Fruitville Pike and Dillerville Road, north of the city proper, and it's on a central manufacturing zoned parcel.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the rest of council? Questions to the public? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to move this to full council on Tuesday, the 10th.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Council President. That concludes community planning.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. We go then to the Public Safety Committee. Councilor Diaz.
Yes, Mr. President, we have one item, and it is Administration Resolution 42, 2022, authorizing a grant application for the police station's renovations. And what I know of is to Lancaster Police Station to vitalize the function of Lancaster City Bureau, and the grant program award would be $950,000. And I know that Patrick can probably enlighten us a little.
Thanks, Councilor Diaz. I'll do this off the top of my head. So we had applied for an RCAP grant in, I guess it was late 2021. We were awarded I believe it's $970,000 award, and it's for a variety of work at the police station building, the most important of which is the parking deck and the garage underneath. The parking deck has been a thorn in the side of the Public Works Department and the Police Bureau basically since that building was built. It's had leaks and other issues since the beginning, and the work that will be funded through 50% through this RCAP grant and then 50% through bond proceeds will deal with that issue and a variety of other things within the police department building.
Thank you,
And
Patrick.
they require this authorization to accept the grant.
Do we have any questions for the committee? Any questions of full council? And any questions from the public? You got scot-free, Patrick.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion then to move this to full council on May the 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes the Public Safety Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. That brings us to the Public Works Committee. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. The Public Works Committee has 4 items on the agenda tonight. The first being Administration Resolution Number 44, 2022, designating a city agent for the Hazard Mitigation Plan. The second being Administration Bill 1022, authorizing a memorandum of understanding with the Lancaster City Conservation District. Number 3, Administration Number 46, 2022, recognizing National Public Works Week. And lastly, a presentation on the sidewalk loan and grant program. And I do see Mr. Campbell here, thankfully, to to talk us through some of these.
If I may,
Please.
Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Mary Gaddis, one of our consultants who works with us on a lot of consent decree, stormwater management, environmental support works, and she'll be making the presentation regarding the hazard mitigation plan.
Okay, Bernie, are you able to pull up the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. Some of you may recall that I was with you back in November along with Steve to talk about the city's responses to extreme weather. And what I'm here about tonight is an application that the city has made, actually multiple applications through federal state grant programs, hazard mitigation planning, hazard mitigation grant program is what I'm here about tonight. So we have seen extreme storms continue, including Hurricane Ida, and seen the impacts of that. I have some pictures here for you. Did you receive a copy of the presentation handout? There should be maps and...
And I'm wondering, are you seeing the presentation on your screens?
No.
Not yet, I'm bringing it up.
Okay,
Okay.
hold on. just a second.
Okay.
I had hoped to have been able to brief you a little bit earlier, Councilmember Walsh, but time just escapes.
It does.
My apologies. I was out of town last week tending to my mother, and I apologize. I got a little delayed with some of my deliverables.
I'm thankful you're here tonight. So.
If you did receive the handout that has the 3 slides on each page as part of your packets, I'm happy to just go through that if that's going to be easier. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so if you want to just go ahead and go to the second slide there. So again, 2 projects that we applied for funding for that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. One addresses recurrent localized flooding. I'm working with Cindy McCormick, Deputy Director of Right-of-Way, on this one. We've seen what that kind of the kinds of storms that we're seeing now, the impacts that they can have on the city's infrastructure, residential sewage backups, things like that. So what we've done is we've applied for $210,000, if you can go to the next slide, to study and develop plans for mitigating recurrent flooding. The final deliverable of this, you can see the different activities there that we'll be undertaking. The final deliverable will be an implementation plan, including an environmental compliance strategy for phased delivery of infrastructure projects to help mitigate that. And I'm going to talk just a little bit more about this project before I move on. If you can go to the next slide, and I've provided you with a full-size map because the one in the presentation is a little hard to see. But one of the first things we'll do is we'll be looking for problem areas within the city. We know of some areas because of studies that have been undertaken in the past, including the Lancaster County Hazard Mitigation Plan, which identified several sites already, and those are indicated on the map. We also have identified a number of other sites. And we will be going out to consult with residents as part of this project. We'll be doing a number of other things, talking with PennDOT, looking at emergency services, talking with emergency services, looking at historical information about property damage, sewage backups, those kinds of things, to try to really identify the universe of these problem localized flooding areas. From that, what we'll be doing is we'll prioritize those sites and take on a more in-depth study. And we'll be looking at things for prioritization. If you want to go to the next slide, looking at things like impacts to homes, businesses, streets, infrastructure, those types of things. And we'll rank those projects then, those properties, based on the relative impact of various criteria. And some of the preliminary criteria is identified there on the slide, everything from community support for something to mitigate the issues to looking at the environmental impacts, the benefits that might be achieved from mitigating flooding in those areas. And I think you all understand the impact of green infrastructure in our community. So when I talk about benefits, it's things like that potentially that we'll be looking at. And we'll be looking at projects that benefit the most vulnerable neighborhoods in Lancaster as a priority. So moving on to our next project, we are looking at a project to address periodic flooding that occurs at the Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant. Our plant has experienced, you see I've adopted the city, our plant. The plant has experienced flood events 3 times since 2010. You can see the severity of the flooding in some of the pictures here. The one picture kind of in the top middle is an air handler which was blown out of the side of a wall when the water pressure caused that air handling unit to implode basically, and the stormwater just rushed into the building. The problem there seems to be that there is so much stormwater coming down into the plant. It has nothing to do with the combined sewer overflows. This is overland stormwater that's coming down to the plant, and it can't get into the stormwater inlets because the pipe where everything leaves the the plant, the diameter is too small. There have been projects undertaken to expand the wastewater treatment plant, but that outfall, it's called, which was constructed in 1932, has never been enlarged. So this project is looking at how we can address that problem through separation, possibly relocation. Pretty involved. If you go to the next slide, you'll see an approximate location of the outfall, which is just below the actual wastewater treatment plant there. And of course, if left unresolved, the flooding here jeopardizes the efficient operation of the plant, which is considered a critical lifeline facility, which serves residents in Lancaster as well as the surrounding municipalities. If you go to the next slide, I have the scope of work here. It's pretty simple when you look at it from our perspective. The engineers will have quite a bit of work to do, though, looking at engineering, conceptual design, evaluation of alternatives, preparation then of a technical memorandum that will outline the alternatives that they've evaluated and make recommendations for moving forward. This will be a $300,000 study, and the final deliverable again will be this technical memorandum. What we need from you, if we can go to the next slide, is adoption of an administrative resolution designating Mayor Sirachi as the city's representative for all required forms and documents for the purposes of obtaining this financial assistance through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is administered by the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. Addressing these issues is expensive, but it is essential, and successfully performing these scoping projects, as they called, should allow us to leverage funds that protect our necessary infrastructure in the future. Once we've done these scoping projects, we receive additional points for any future applications for these projects with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, as well as the state. Should help alleviate some of the flooding in the city and make the shores of the Conestoga River more available for potential recreational use in the future, which takes us to our next slide, and hopefully a project that you remember me talking about when we were here in November, and that is the project called River Connections, which is a grant-funded project collecting stories of people's connections to the river. And Marquise Lupton, TCP Network, has been engaged by the city to help us with filming these stories. We've collected almost a dozen so far. We are still looking for people in the community who have a story to share that they would like to get out there. So if any of you know of somebody, or if you personally would like to share a story about your connection to the river, please let us know. And finally, I want to end with an invitation to attend the premiere of the River Connections project at Zootropolis. If you can go to the next slide, it is part of the activities that are going to be undertaken in the beginning of June as part of Water Week. The Lancaster Conservancy coordinates this county-wide initiative. The city has participated since its origins about 6 years ago. And there will be activities in the square, but then we'll be hosting the premiere of the River Connections project at Zootropolis starting at 6. We'll have some activities there for education and engagement of the public. The performance will begin around 6:30, and I won't tell you too much about it, but it will be an exciting hour of hearing the stories we've collected, hearing live performance of poetry and song, possibly, of people's connections to the river. And we are focusing on our Black and Brown members of the community, and I can tell you that the response to this has been amazing, and people are very grateful for this opportunity to contribute to the legacy of Lancaster in this way. And that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Just a few questions. In regards to the grant that you're applying for, this is all under one major ask for the two projects, is that correct? Or are they separate applications?
They're
for each
separate
project?
applications, but we just need the one
Overarching.
overarching resolution, and we can use that for both of the applications, yes.
Sure. And like you said, these are very expensive undertakings. Do you have a plan in case these are not approved? Are you going after other funding sources in hopes of getting these projects completed?
Well, because they are very necessary, we're going to have to find one way or another to make them possible. This is funding that can be made available through this process, so we're hoping that it is something that the council looks upon favorably. And as Mary had indicated, it does allow us to be in a better position when we ask for other funds, not only for the supplementing of the wastewater infrastructure, but later on when we're dealing with either consent decree issues or other major capital infrastructure.
Great, thank you. Does any members of the committee have questions for Ms. Gaddis or Mr. Campbell?
If I may?
Of course.
Thank you. You stated that your project you'll execute it on the most vulnerable neighborhood
Right.
in Lancaster. Have you already identified those vulnerable neighborhoods?
Do you want to talk about the scoring criteria for?
So part of the challenge will be confirming a scoring criteria that indicates not only the nature of the volume of water to be managed, the numbers of people that may be adversely affected, the potential capital damage should the situation not be resolved. There were, I believe, 4 of the locations on that map had been identified in 2019, and we're looking at other sites that came about that we either became aware of with subsequent weather events or that we became aware of due to complaints from members of the public. There will be a matrix, a rubric developed that will measure which ones can be done. There, if I remember correctly, there's about 18 or 19 sites on that map, and our hope is to be able to address 8 to 10 of them through this program, which may also give us tremendous information about how to address the balance. But otherwise, there is kind of a matrix that gets developed as a part of the process.
I would suggest that we'll also use some of the data that, what's the neighborhood scoring, through the Department of Neighborhood Engagement. I'm sorry, I can't remember the.
Block
Strength indicator, thank you, yes. So we try to collaborate around those issues around census data, need in the community, those kinds of factors.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yes, Mayor. So in regards to the plan and the study, can you give me an idea if you would have also data regarding the wildlife and how it affects when there is hazards and flooding?
Can you repeat the last part, data regarding the
Wildlife?
wildlife?
Yeah, that has not come up in anything that I've read in the scope of work about the project, but
So even though it's tangentially related, it's not directly related to this particular project. For those of you who have seen some of of the materials we've made available, you may know that in terms of aquatic life, the city of Lancaster is part of the stretch of the Conestoga that is cleanest. This is just contributing to how can we manage the water that goes into the Conestoga at a variety of different locations. It is not specifically to either increase or make a metric related to aqua or other biological forms. Independently, as we work with municipalities upstream, we do want and try to collect some of that information and see what the effects of their impact on the upriver condition of the river is and try to make adjustments to it. I'm part of the Clean Water Partners, for instance, and we work diligently with the agricultural entities upstream as well as the municipalities. But to answer your question directly, this particular study is not specifically related to that kind of measurement, although in the long run, the better we can improve the situation, the better we improve the condition of the river itself.
Thank you.
Any questions from other council members? Okay. If I may, if you could speak to the, oh. I'm so sorry. Questions from the public?
Tim Stuhldreher, One United Lancaster. With respect to the localized flooding in neighborhoods, what would be an example or two of a mitigation measure that would ultimately be taken?
A variety of mitigation measures.
Mhm.
Examples might be the identification of how much volume of the water there is, identification and design of swales that might divert that water to appropriate locations, the design and implementation of green infrastructure, either forebays or other green infrastructure that can try to manage that water, not only the quality of the water that goes into the stream, into the river, but also the magnitude and the velocity of that water. So there's a lot of things we're trying to control in terms of erosion as well as water quality.
And with respect to the wastewater treatment plant, if I understand correctly, the issue is water from nearby slopes running off onto that property, and then you don't have enough means of channeling and diverting it?
Yes, this is a situation that's not radically different than a lot of other situations throughout the city. We have a mixture of rock as well as sandy loam and clay loam materials, the kind of scharst material that is the substrate of the city. And so water hits the surface of the ground and will go where it can. If you are not able to manage where it is directed, it can go into places that are inconvenient. And in this particular case, a lot of infrastructure was built back in the 1930s. It was not necessarily badly maintained, but it was not necessarily, people were not necessarily aware of how to better manage the direction of the water over time. And as time went on, more of the stone and the groundwork was eroded, and water went into places that are very inconvenient and therefore would flood the building. That's the kind of situation that needs to be remedied, but it's not as simple as just diverting the water. It's managing, as Mary had described, the variety of places that water is coming from and maintaining the wastewater treatment plant infrastructure, which is critical to us and we're going to continue to use for not just the foreseeable future, but hopefully beyond the foreseeable future. So it's a complicated engineering exercise to understand and ascertain where that water is coming from, where it can go, how it can be diverted, and how it can be managed.
And last question to that point, it is critical infrastructure. Has the flooding ever significantly impeded operation or gotten close?
To my knowledge, it has not significantly impeded operation. However, it is never fun nor convenient to have to operate while you're walking around in ankle or knee depth water. So it really is, I don't want to say that it's only an inconvenience because it is much more than that. But it has not adversely impaired our ability to deliver treated wastewater for the city of Lancaster.
Thanks much.
You're very welcome.
Any additional public comment? Okay. So moving on to the next administrative bill, Mr. Campbell, could you speak to the memorandum of understanding with the Lancaster County?
Excuse me, Counselor, can we
Yes.
get a motion and a second for Resolution 44?
Okay, of course. With that in mind, I would like to make a motion to move the resolution number 4422 to the agenda of council on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now we will move.
I'm sorry, it'd be Mr. Coletti, the second. I'm sorry, you would be the other member of the committee, Mr. Coletti.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I have it up on my screen, but I don't have it connected to you. I apologize for not having had this ready for you guys before.
Settings for share screen.
My apologies again.
There's something in settings for share screen. Yeah, is it extending or is it? Yeah, I mean, it's. Okay, so it's this. Have you done this?
There it is. Thank you very much. So, thank you very much. This is hopefully a relatively straightforward situation. It's an MOU between the Lancaster County Conservation District and the City of Lancaster. It's largely an administrative piece. In order to enter into a memorandum of understanding with another governmental entity, we must do it through legislation. This is a primarily administrative function so that we can work cooperatively with the Lancaster County Conservation District with communication and support between it and the city to formalize interactions related to common programs and cooperatively and mutually beneficial working relationship between both entities. The Conservation District has existed for about 70 years, and its primary purpose is to educate local citizens to become better environmental stewards, build partnerships, provide technical assistance, and share information, and it strives to achieve environmental compliance by building a culture of responsible stewardship. This is obviously very important to us as we continue to position ourselves as an environmentally sensitive city not only in the region, but throughout the United States. The purpose of the work also includes erosion and sediment control and NPDES addressing, which is the NPDES is the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. And in this, we coordinate activities with the municipalities and the county associated with MS4, which for those of you who may not remember, municipal separate storm sewer system permit requirements. It includes public outreach and public participation, notifying and providing summary of events, and construction site stormwater management, meeting all erosion sediment requirements, providing info regarding illicit discharges, supporting contractors and private property owners as they try to meet these standards. A second part is education and outreach, defining educational programs provided by LCCD and available to municipalities in the county, including its watershed program a watershed coordinator for LCCD, which should be used as a resource for community members. The city shall be an active participant in volunteer watershed groups and to notify each party of applicable education events. So it's, again, part of the means by which we do outreach for the public, public businesses and property owners to be aware of the information that's available and how to comply. Oops, there's one that I missed. We talked about erosion and sediment control, its joint commitment to control accelerated erosion. We talked about that in the last piece, as a matter of fact. Preventing sediment pollution, where the responsibility of the LCCD is to administer and implement the erosion and sediment control under Chapter 102 and 92 of NPDES. And the city's role, again, is to inform those involved with earth disturbance activities, forward complaints, and make sure that information continues to get promulgated. So the ask is basically to enter into this MOU so that we can affect these activities and thereby implement the agreement. There is no cost to the city except for the staff time that is spent in doing review and answering questions from the public or making information available. And that has been the case for the, at least the recent history in our relationship with LCCD.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Is there any questions from the committee? Questions from other council members?
Counselor Walsh? Mr. Campbell, just to give a little bit of context for in the past, because you mentioned that the Conservation District has existed for a long period of time. Were there previous memorandums of understanding in place that operated a little differently than this or had different expectations, or is this something new that municipalities are taking up now?
It's a very good question, and I unfortunately have to defer to Patrick because he may have more of the history of what was required in the past. I mean, we do know that a couple of years ago, a new administrative requirement was made that for certain kinds of agreements, we needed to get legislative approval to do so. I don't know if this was a result of this or not.
I see.
We now know that, though, that it is a requirement at this time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We just want to comply.
Of course. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Questions from the public? Seeing none, I would like to make a motion to move the Administrative Bill 10-2022 to the agenda of council on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we will move to the last resolution, the administrative resolution number 46, 2022, recognizing National Public Works Week.
Are you able to read that, Bernie?
Certainly, I can jump in here. In the past, we've made, I guess council has routinely recognized the contributions of public works workers of the city of Lancaster. And while we have not done that in the last few years, we thought it was a good idea to revive that. There is a National Public Works Weeks in which they're recognized and celebrated for their contributions and the things that we experience on a daily basis, from the streets that we drive on, sidewalks we walk on, the water that comes out of our tap, and recognizing them for those contributions.
Thank you.
I did also want to emphasize in that proclamation some of the transformations that have gone on over the last couple of years, where we do in fact try to focus much more on satisfying the needs of the public, engaging the public in the decision-making process, and being aware of the ways that we are fundamental to their day-to-day experience in terms of living, working, and playing in the city of Lancaster.
Any questions from the committee members?
If I may. Thank you so much, Campbell, for everything that you've done. I think it's great how everything's been improving, and I'm always looking at what else you're going to do.
And continuing to challenge me, which I appreciate. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee? Questions from other council members? And questions from the public? Wonderful. So I would like to make a motion to move the Administrative Resolution Number 46, 2022, recognizing National Public Works Weeks to the agenda of council on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last item that we have is the sidewalk loan and grant program presentation.
So, not quite sure why this is the one that is showing up, because part of the clarification I wanted to make is that at this moment, we are pushing it forward very much as a sidewalk loan program. The grant is by exception, and I'll talk briefly about the nature of that exception. But I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention and let people know that this program that is currently underway is one that we're not only fully implementing, but we've so far seen great receptivity to it. The need of the program, I'm not sure why this isn't, I think I may be in the wrong document for some reason. When I'm changing on the screen, on my screen, it's not changing on that screen.
Try the
Enable. I am not a Luddite.
Have it open twice.
I do love technology.
This is the one you want to present, right?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DJ.
So, simply put, as many of you know, those of you who may have received notifications to repair your sidewalks and curbs ahead of getting street paving done, the city needs to ensure safe sidewalks for those who live, work, and play in the city. We had a bit of a hiatus during COVID, and it is often a hardship when you receive a bill that you did not expect and you certainly did not budget for. Our primary focus is where we are paving or where we have received complaints. So we are not willy-nilly going throughout the city and trying to identify areas of poor paving. We do know that there is poor paving in a lot of different areas, or poor sidewalks and curbs in a lot of different areas, but we're really just focusing on those areas where we are making public capital investments, such as either upgrading utilities and/or repaving streets, so that you basically have a fully improved public right-of-way area when we do pave those streets. And we are trying to address the need to meet city standards in a consistent manner and with as little problem to the residents as practical. The program summary, this is unfortunately, I apologize, this is the wrong one, but I'll make the adjustments as I go along. The program provides for a means of paying for the sidewalks and curb replacement, and there are basically four options. One, you can perform, as always, you can perform the work on your own. If you receive the notification, go ahead, hire your contractor and replace the work as per the notification. Two, you might be able to pay directly in full and enter into our program, which gives you the benefit of a 10% discount of the cost of doing that work. Three, you can pay over time. You would pay in full over time, the target being $100 per month over the life of the project, however long it may take you to do. So if you have a small project that's maybe $800 or $900, you might go up to 8 or 9 months in $100 payments per month. If you have a corner property and you have 3 $3,500 worth of work or more, it may extend quite long. And also, the fourth option is to pay via a low-interest loan program, which would reduce monthly payments and possibly reduce interest even further. So we have the ability to work with you to negotiate a way that makes it easier for you to pay for the work that has to get done. The purpose of doing that is to make sure that the work can get done so that we can stay on schedule with our paving and stay abreast of the work. Even though it says here grant program if eligible, at this moment we are not proactively considering the grant program. This program addresses property owners. It's not for renters, it's for the people who own the properties. And we believe that in the vast majority of cases, we can negotiate either some sort of loan, low-interest loan program payment, or even protracted way of paying. We would like to consider, as time goes on, adding in the grant program, or if there's an extraordinarily situation, we would negotiate on a case-by-case basis a grant. So some of the advantages of opting into the program is that the work would be guaranteed to be performed to city requirements with a 3-year warranty. So if there are any problems with the work, it is the city's responsibility, not yours, you as property owner. The contractors would be and in fact already have been competitively bid, which means that we get competitive and hopefully therefore good prices, and the city will manage and inspect the work, and the permitting is taken care of by the city. So a lot of the things that become headaches to the property owner are alleviated by entering into this program, including wondering if I've met the standards and the requirements. In this case, you are guaranteed to have met the standards and requirements, and if there's any problem within that 3-year period, the city steps in on your behalf to fix that problem. Where is the street paving and where is the sidewalk and curb work being done? It's difficult to see the color differentiation here, but the city is doing paving in several areas. You see West Lemon Street, which is part of the eastbound connector, a couple of blocks in far northeast, several blocks in southeast, a couple of blocks in far northwest, 1 or 2 blocks in southwest, and several blocks in southeast, which the city is paving on its own, and therefore we need those curbs and sidewalks completed. In the blue is where PennDOT is doing some work, and in the yellow, which are the areas in the cluster of areas in the northeast and some slightly to the west, this is where a lot of UGI work is being done. And as they move forward, they also will pave, but that means that we need to upgrade the sidewalks and curbs in those areas as well. So this is where the work is focused on. And of course, if there are complaints or bad situations, we include those as notifications, and those people are eligible for the program as well. Oops. The magnitude of the program is, so far in 2022, we have issued 700 notices. All of the initial notices were sent between January and March, and we've started to receive responses to those already. The first tranche of work to be done will be work on Lime Street and the UGI work in the 4th Street area. The deadline to respond to be eligible for the program is May 27th. The next tranche of work will be the Pershing Avenue area, and the deadline to respond to that will be in June 27th. And then in May, the last second notices will go out to Lemon, Mill, and the UGI Northeastern Pod, and that deadline to respond will be in July. So we're trying, even though we had hoped to have initiated this program a bit earlier, we're trying to do a rollout that gives people enough time before their areas are being worked on or getting paving done to get their sidewalks done. The property owners who did not perform or pay for paving over the past several years may be grandfathered in if they choose, and the successful competitively bid contractor was Doug Lamb, who has done tremendous work for us in the past, consistent, et cetera. So that is the entity that's doing the work on our behalf. So far, by April 22nd, which was the first group of people starting to respond to the program, we had received 40 responses where 12 of them had already made full payment, 21 were waiting for full payment, which means that 33 of the 40 responses were willing to just go forward and pay and take advantage of the 10% discount. 2 were waiting for promissory note information so that they would be able to be eligible for the loan program, and 4 are we're waiting for income verification, and we have every expectation that they will be eligible for the program as well. This is very promising for us. We did not, frankly, expect quite as high an initial response, but it's still early. Many of the people who have not responded are the ones who may have more difficulty in being able to pay. We are working with each property owner as they come to us. Often what they receive is a notification of violation, and they are seeking either a waiver or an exception to that waive, and our engineer goes out and looks at every situation again if necessary. And in some cases, we've been able to negotiate a slightly different response. Recognizing that we rolled out this program real quick this year, we want to be prepared and have a lot longer lead time for next year. So over the course of the year, we generally prepare a paving plan by working with the different utilities to figure out what areas they want to pave or what areas they want to do work in. Our hope is that by the end of summer, we will have the paving plan in anticipation for all of 2023, which allows us to do the assessment of the condition of sidewalks and curbs in August, September, and October, and send out those notices with plenty of time for people to either respond to the program or to get the work done before warm weather starts in 2023. We want to, over the course of 2022, assess the success of the program or the non-success of the program for that matter. So we're going to be calibrating what works and what does not work. We want to be able to make adjustments as necessary. And if successful, we want to be able to add other options. And I say options because we would not necessarily require people to put in trees or permeable pavement, but it would be an opportunity if you wanted those assets or enhancements that you could be eligible under this program for them to be paid for in a similar manner. So in its summary, that is the nature of the sidewalk loan program that we're currently operating. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Tell me where this program is being advertised and how you're reaching out, as you're looking to possibly expand this in the future, or aside from, I guess my main question is, aside from the notices that you're sending, is there any other forms of communication with these property owners to follow up if they're not being responsive, or as a reminder if they haven't signed up?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we are making it available, and they're receiving notices in their notification of violation that this program does exist, with as much detail as possible, a contact number, et cetera. And every subsequent follow-up, which we're doing perhaps once every 10 to 14 days, is reminding them that this program is available to them. The fact of the matter is, we're not changing the fact that as property owner, you're responsible to take care of the sidewalk and curb. We're providing an opportunity for it to be easier for you. Hopefully, something that you could finance in other capital improvements, or be able to, if you can't get a loan out on your own, be able to take the loan out with the city and make it easier for this to happen in a timely manner so that the work can get done completely. In the future, we want to be able to advertise more widely, not just to those for whom a notification of violation will be issued, but my hope, and this is not a promise, and I've been reminded often enough that when I say something of what might be able to happen, people often take it as it will happen. We're not committing, but the possibility is that if you know, or if we're issuing notices of violations along your street, or you know when the sidewalk paving plan is released, that your sidewalk is in bad condition, you might want to elect early and give yourself even more time to avail yourself of this program.
Thank you. And one follow-up, for the sidewalk paving plans, the only ones that are available at present are 2022. 2023 hasn't been unveiled yet.
That is correct. 2023 is not yet available, and we're going to be measuring very carefully how successful that is in a variety of different categories for 2022.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Counselor, if I may. Can you give me an idea of what the actual percentage rate is?
I don't know. Patrick? I'm asking our Administrative Services Director.
The base loan interest rate is 2%. And then, as Mr. Campbell presented, if there are, with income verifications and other qualifications, there may be the ability to either reduce that or completely eliminate that, depending on the circumstances.
And another question would be, in regards to some of our elderly that are, on fixed income, is there any other programs that you foresee, maybe Patrick might answer that could help them fix the violation in regards to the sidewalk?
So in most cases, in all cases, we're talking about the property owner. And if the property owner is still on a fixed income, our first lines of negotiation would be to reduce the monthly fee and reduce the interest rate. And we would go as far as we can with them. Though in those extreme cases, that might be the opportunity where we try to negotiate a grant. But we're not starting with the grant, we're starting with how can you as property owner leverage your property to be able to make this capital investment possible.
And do you foresee any type of liens in case someone is unemployed and are not able to pay right away?
Yes, just as in every other situation, if the work is not done as per the notification violation, the property does get liened. The city will in fact go ahead and do the work at the lower cost and will be able to lien the property. That's not generally a problem unless you are relocating or refinancing your building. And you'd have the opportunity to renegotiate with us over time.
If I could just add one thing to that, is that in the promissory note that property owners will be signing, if they would default on the loan, the city's recourse is a lien on the property. But that's the only recourse, so nothing gets turned over to collection or anything like that. But ultimately, the idea here is that over time, this becomes a program that can be funded through the repayment. So we want to make sure as many as property owners as possible can make those repayments, which is why we want to have, reasonable terms on the loan. But if they don't ultimately repay, we need to have that lien recourse so that when the property eventually sells, or if a refinancing happens, something like that, the city gets repaid, and those funds would then go right back into the program to be available for future loans.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for that
Mr.
clarification,
Campbell.
Patrick.
If I may, Councilor West. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think there was one more from Councilmember Kalist.
Yes, thank you. Does the program include, the program addresses the repair of a sidewalk and curve, but does it also include to build the sidewalks where, in the areas of the city where there is no sidewalk?
No. If there is not currently a sidewalk and we're not requiring that a new sidewalk be put in, you may be referring to another set of circumstances that is currently going on at the moment,
Yes.
requesting sidewalks where there are not currently sidewalks.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, we would not be issuing a notice of violation if there's currently not a sidewalk in that particular location. There may be a few exceptions where, for whatever reason, there might have been a sidewalk once upon a time, and the property owner may have removed it, or a previous property owner may have removed it. But no, this is really focused on where there are currently sidewalks, and in the effort of upgrading the street and the paving, we need to upgrade the safety of being able to negotiate the sidewalks. And in fact, we use the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act standards for determining whether a sidewalk needs to be repaired, whether it's a tripping hazard, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not arbitrarily making these things up. We're using some standards that are widely accepted.
Thank you.
Questions from other council members?
If I may, Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Thank you. First, thank you, Director Campbell, for presenting to us today. I'm happy to hear that this program is going into effect. As someone who received the notice before, I was rather surprised to see the expense on a curb repair, so I'm glad that these options are going to be available. And I think I missed a slide, but as far as the pay in full options, under that scenario, the city would be responsible for hiring the contractor and be responsible for managing that process for the resident?
If you elect to enter the program and pay in full, you can take advantage of the 10% discount, and thereby, because we would be working with the contractor that we've selected, be able to do the work to our standard. If you elect to do it on your own, then the program does not apply to you.
Even if you receive a loan from?
Well, you would not find yourself receiving a loan unless you chose to opt into the program. If you do opt into the program and you either pay in full, which means you don't need a loan, or you choose to take out a loan, enter into a loan agreement with us, then yes, you fall under that 3-year warranty, and you can work with our contractor, and all of those safeguards apply to you.
Okay, that's great. And then one question, it was mentioned in the slide regarding the UGI repairs with the meter switches. With those sidewalk repairs, who's managing that process? Is that UGI that's responsible for that cost and managing the process, or does that fall into the city as they do their work?
For the UGI replacement, UGI manages that. The coordination with the paving will happen with us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilor Walsh? Director Campbell, you mentioned that in instances where property owners who didn't perform or pay for sidewalk work over the last several years can essentially retroactively enter into the program. Can you provide any specifics about the time frame for that and how many people that might fall to or might fall into that category?
Unfortunately, I can't.
Okay.
This is something that we're contemplating. It should not have actually been on that particular piece of the presentation, but we do know one of the things that prompted us to move and act as quickly as we did was because there were a number of people who had received notices who were not in a good position to pay, and we wanted to be able to make available to them the same advantage that we were about to make available to others.
I see. But nothing has been communicated to them as of yet.
I have to get back to you on that. I think we actually have communicated something to some, but I need to reconfirm.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Mr. Campbell? Please.
I have one more question. Thank you. And what are the requirements for the property owner to get the loan?
Basically, it's really pretty simple. If you, for whatever reason, find yourself not able to pay in a timely manner, you can request to have access to the loan. It may be a slightly different interest rate if your income as a property owner is above 80% of median, or if it is above 50% of median. But if you are finding it difficult to pay in the way that we had hoped, or the way that we're asking you to, we're making it available. We're providing that level of flexibility. You might even say it's really, really inconvenient for me to pay all of this all in one time, and therefore I elect to enter into the program. As far as we're concerned, that will be fine.
Thank you.
If I may, Counselor Walsh, I really appreciate, Director Campbell, your tenacity in moving this program forward and the support of your team. I know that we have been reticent, quite honestly, to cite sidewalks, and that has, because of the financial implications, and that has other implications for people who are walking throughout the city who may have mobility issues or are pushing a stroller or whatever it may be. And so I really appreciate that we've been able to move this forward, as it has, long been a concern of mine that we have a $200 permit fee to put in a new sidewalk, and then on top of that, it could cost literally thousands of dollars, especially if you are one of the unlucky people that lives on a corner lot and have the whole side of your property to contend with as well. So I just thank you for helping to move this priority forward. This has been on the list for a while, and it has been something that was definitely delayed because of COVID. And so to finally see this coming before council, I really appreciate the efforts.
Thank you very much. And it was a lot of effort by the team, by the engineers who do the inspections out on the street, by Cindy McCormick, the city engineer, critiquing everything that we were doing to try to make it work appropriately. And of course, the work with Barry Handwerker, our solicitor, to try to figure out how could we make it happen legally, equitably, et cetera. And last but certainly not least, Patrick Hopkins, in making sure that on a financial level, it was going to be something that's not going to adversely impact the financial health of the city. We don't know that for a fact yet, but we're hopeful.
And on that point, I would just add that a lot of the national data that looks at these kinds of repayment plans, whether it's around critical repair or so on, provides that the repayment rates are very high, in the 90%, because when you work with somebody and you are helping them solve a problem at their property, and you're working with them to come up with the loan terms and so on that are going to work for them, they're more likely to consistently make those payments. And so whether that's $25, $50, $100, or a full prepayment with the benefit of getting a 10% discount, that's all very significant. And it also helps us advance really critical infrastructure, which are our sidewalks.
Absolutely.
The one thing I wanted to add is just about the financing of this. So the initial funding for the program is coming from a curb and sidewalk fund that has existed for decades and basically consists of funds that were paid back over a long period of time from property owners who actually did get liened. The city did the paving in some cases, or a contractor did the paving, and their property got liened, and they paid those liens off over time, or the property sold and the lien was satisfied at that point. That fund right now has about $143,000 in it, so that's the initial tranche of funds that we're putting to this program. Again, as you know, as property owner, we've got a lot of property owners who have said they're going to pay at the 10% discount, so that will be immediate funds back in. The cost of the sidewalk work will also come out of that fund. And then we'll come back to you at a future date with some other potential options for additional funding to go into that fund.
Yes.
Any additional questions from council?
Councilor Walsh, if I may. Sorry to jump in at the end. Director Campbell, you were mentioning that Doug Lamb is doing the sidewalk work for the foreseeable future, at least for the components that were previously identified on the map.
Yes.
Is there, if I'm trying to visualize the slides in my memory, you mentioned that there's a competitive bid process to select the contractor in question. Will there be when you say move on to the next set of regions, will there be a new bidding process, or have I misunderstood some critical element?
It's a very good question. Most likely every year we will be doing this kind of a bidding so that we have timely numbers in that moment, and based on how how much volume of work is done, we may find that we may need to even do another solicitation later on. If it's too much volume of work to be done by one contractor, even by change order, and there are limitations to how much you can increase or add on to the contract, then we would do another solicitation as well. But we did get a goodly amount of response and interest from local contractors. We may actually think about doing it a little bit differently and maybe having a coterie of contractors in the future. But I'm not committing to anything except we want, as you know, we want to make as many opportunities available for economic development, for businesses, et cetera, who can do the work that help build the city of Lancaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Walsh.
Any questions from the public?
Sorry about that. Tim Stuhlder, One United Lancaster. You mentioned 700 properties notices have gone out. What percentage of properties in the work area is that? Is that all of them, half of them, a third of them?
It's a good question. I'm really not sure. Unfortunately, many of these communities have not had a lot of infrastructure or paving work done relatively recently. So it's probably a much higher percentage than one might find if this program was in place for 5-10 years. Because we are looking at areas that have been, I won't say neglected, but have not necessarily had a lot of infrastructure work going on until recently. Some of the streets that are in Southeast, I mean, almost all of the streets are related to areas that have not been served well or have not been served over the last several years. The one exception is when we're doing utilities, whether it's PPL or UGI. That work has to get done in order to fulfill the needs of infrastructure. But we are trying also to build up our portfolio, if you will, of better streets, of streets that have not been unattended to over a number of years, and that's part of why you see certain streets in Southeast, Southwest, and Northeast that don't have utilities being done, but they have not been attended to for quite some time. I can't answer what percentage of the properties are, and unfortunately, in some cases, it may still be a misleading metric, because if you have a small street with 40 properties over 800 linear feet, that'll be a different metric than if in a different part of town that has only 20 properties over the same distance. But I think what we're trying to do is address those areas that have been not attended to as assiduously as we would have liked in the past.
Is the city's expectation that the price it's offering to a property owner is comparable, lower than, would it be reliably lower than what a property owner would be able to obtain on his or her own? It's a good question. We have no control over what someone might get on by doing it on their own. But because we did do competitive bidding for the contractors we've selected and meeting the certain quality standards, we know that the prices that we're getting through our contractor are competitive. That is not to guarantee that you cannot get it at a lower price if you hire someone on your own. Okay. And would the property owner have some leeway in the scope of work? In particular, I'm thinking a lot of sidewalks have been pushed up by trees. Would a property owner be able to say, I just don't want a tree out there, rip it out, let's
In most
just have
cases,
sidewalk?
what the property owners are doing are, they're either sending a request for waiver or sending an objection saying that either they believe that the sidewalk is in good shape or it's an extraordinary situation for which they should not be held accountable. The way that our regulations in the city of Lancaster operate, the property owner does take that responsibility, and we have been as flexible as practical if we can see that it might still be a matter of judgment. Even though we're following the ADA guidelines, if Much of the rest of that of that sidewalk is in good shape, but it's just one square that's in bad shape. We may reduce it to just that one square. I just signed a couple of waivers earlier today where people had requested that instead of having replacing the bad sidewalk up against the curb with another sidewalk, they had requested that it be replaced with grass, with a green area, which, as long as there was a sufficient width in the sidewalk, that was acceptable in those particular instances.
Thank you much.
Any additional questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, I believe that concludes the agenda of the Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank
Walsh.
you, Director Campbell.
All right. That brings us to the Economic Development Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. I hereby open the Economic Development Committee. I have a brief update on our ARPA RFP process. Per my last update, we have selected a consultant to support the city in management of ARPA dollars and requirements. City staff met with the consultant team last week and are finalizing the formal agreement prior to announcing the firm publicly. And in addition, they also discussed the work plan and provided additional information for drafting the housing RFP, which hopefully would be coming out soon. So that concludes my update. I am happy to hear any questions or comments from the committee or the rest of council. Or from the public.
Actually, Councilor Arroyo.
Yep. Councilor Baker.
Do you have a sense of timeline on when that may be announced and when we may see the RFP process roll out?
I'm actually going to defer to Director Delfs for the timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Beke. We were hoping to be able to give an update tonight. I think we're very, very close to being able to announce the firm. So I think that should happen, should be able to happen at the next meeting. We're also, I'm happy to send a note to councilors once the news is public.
Thank you.
Councilor Arroyo, if I may.
Council President.
So, sorry, you mentioned possibly doing so at the next meeting. Are you referring to the first meeting of council for the month or the June committee meeting, just for clarity's sake?
I was thinking about the next council meeting because we may have the news by that time, but I guess generally we would be making our announcements typically at the June committee meeting. I'm happy to do either.
I think Councilor Arroyo, this is your part of the store, but I think I'd be eager to hear as much as soon as possible. So I'd certainly be willing to make space for that at the May 10th council meeting. But
Yes, Council President. I could do it as an interim report or as a part of the report. Yep.
yeah, that sounds great. We'll do it as part of the report of the Economic Development Committee of Council.
Very good.
Thank you, and thank you.
Absolutely. Any additional questions from council or the public?
Will the contract be coming to council for approval in connection with this?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Director Delfs, no, the contract will be finalized by the city staff. Yep. Yep, thank you. Great. Hearing no more questions, that concludes my update, and I'll close the Economic Development Committee. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Arroyo. That brings us to the Committee of the Whole. We'll begin with Council Resolution Number 41, recognizing Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'll start by hearing a motion.
Motion to move this resolution to full council.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Diaz, I believe you asked for this resolution to be introduced. If you'd like to briefly discuss it before council.
Yes. The week of May, or shall I say the month of May, is to recognize the Asian Americans and the Pacific Islanders and all the contribution they have basically given us all through the United States, from the Transcontinental Railroad to, the building many different organizations by having businesses, whether it's food in our community. I think, supporting them and uplifting them too, since they have fought, the American War, the Civil War, and I just feel that they should also be recognized.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there any other council comments? From the public? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. That brings us to Administration Resolution number 43, 2022, establishing the date of Halloween observance. It's very frequent, I think we do a lot of frivolous stuff up here on the dais, so I'm glad to take time out for the hard-hitting issues. No, seriously though, for anybody watching at home, or new counselors, this is one of the things that you may hear the most about in a given year if people don't know what date is set for trick-or-treating. So first, I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Somebody tell me about Halloween observance.
I will. This was a really difficult, the weather really interfered with Halloween last year. There is a desire among the local municipalities to have a coordinated night for Halloween for trick-or-treating purposes, and to maintain that because we were various municipalities either changed because of the weather to different dates or held fast because that was what we all decided on. And so now it is, I think we will be the fifth or sixth community to adopt, if it is council's will, to adopt this resolution, making trick or treat whatever night Halloween is, and that would be that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Are there any, it's good that we sort this out in May. Are there any council comments? Tim?
Wait. Council President, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So we're going to have one day only, and regardless of rain, no rain date? What's that?
Mayor?
That is the resolution before you, is that there would be one date, and that would be the date for trick-or-treating in the city of Lancaster, regardless of the weather. Pardon me?
And regardless of Sundays, I believe.
Yes, regardless of Sundays.
And regardless of Sunday, yes.
Okay. All right, one more time. Any council comments?
I'll just say that if it is the will of this body to not move in this direction, that I do not want to be the person who is determining the date or the rain date, because I am not a weather forecaster, nor do I want that responsibility.
Understood. I do have,
Please.
and I don't know if it's a question, I don't know. Regardless of Sunday, that's a little sketchy for me. So there you go.
Yeah.
If Halloween was on a Sunday, I don't think trick-or-treating should be on a Sunday.
I do,
Just my opinion.
I do agree as well, especially since kids go to school the next day as well, and there are religious practices that probably wouldn't be happy.
Any other council comments?
Council President? I would just, say that's well taken. Halloween could fall on a Thursday, and it would also be a school night, and if anyone's particular religious practices prohibit them from participating, they probably wouldn't do it on a Sunday or a Monday or any day of the week.
And I'd just also add that the hours for trick-or-treating in the city of Lancaster are typically between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. It's a 2-hour window because it is already dark. We're talking about the end of October, so it's already dark. And I know that most homes typically abide by that 6 to 8 window. That's when most of the kids are out walking around and collecting candy. And so those same hours would be maintained regardless of what night it is, because that's been the tradition of the hours of 6 to 8. Also just say that one of the main complaints that I heard was just that this is really something that a lot of kids look forward to and families, and they want to have some, they don't want to have trick-or-treating canceled for any reason. And so by moving this ordinance forward, if that is the will of council, to take this up for a vote, it would really just come down to whether or not it was going to be held on that particular day, and that there would be no other changes that would be made regardless of whether or date of the week, because there have been other instances where Halloween has fallen on a weeknight and it's been pushed to a Friday or a Saturday.
I feel I'm compelled to ask, is there any legal effect or authority that goes alongside this decision in the sense that, I know we really can't tell people what night to celebrate Halloween, though of course they generally trick-or-treat on the night that we say trick-or-treating is. I think what I'm really asking is, are there any city services or enforcement or special awareness that needs to coincide with the observance of trick-or-treating that maybe we ought to be aware of?
No.
Okay. Presuming we've exhausted comments from council, Tim? Okay. Excellent. I look forward to a robust discussion on this subject next Tuesday. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. And now we have the policy review process presentation. That feels like...
Actually, that would be the solicitor's report. That was my understanding.
Oh, I was going to say that feels like a Patrick Hopkins special, but okay. Well, I will, with your consent, council members, I will defer that to the June committee meeting, and we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Excellent. We go now to the report of the city clerk. Mr. Harris?
Yes, Mr. President. Some of the things I've done in the last month. So regarding writing and research, I researched the resolution and wrote the resolution regarding the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I prepared the trick-or-treating resolution and the Act 537 Sewage Plan Amendment Resolution. I collected lots of statements of financial interest. I've got more than probably 120 of those in the file now, and I'm glad to say that I can close that file for year 2021, and I don't have to start harassing people again until January of next year. The Board, Commission, and Authority appointee orientation, we held the second one of those the 21st of April, and we had some, 31 board appointees that attended that and were oriented on the positions and on their service. So we have done that twice now, and we have, about 55 that have now gone through that process. This is following the I guess this time last year, we passed a resolution requiring orientation, and we're doing this for the education and also the protection of our boards, commission, and authority appointees, so that they're aware of some of the legal ramifications and some of the rules that they should be playing by. I attended the Lancaster Parking Authority. Well, first I attended the ribbon cutting for the garage that was held a week ago for the Christian Street Garage. Of course, that was a ceremonial opening. The actual opening will not be until the middle of this month. And I also attended their board meeting last week and sent you a summary of that discussion. I swore in the newly appointed member of the Board of Health. I communicated with the city's code publisher, so soon we should have that process moving where the ordinances that were approved in 2021 will get codified. So it's been about a year since we've had codification done. So those ordinances adopted in 2021 and earlier this year will then be incorporated into the online and printed code of the city of Lancaster. At this point, they're listed as new laws on the city code. And that's some of the things that I did last month.
Thank you, as always, for making our work possible, Mr. Harris. With that, I will hear a motion to adjourn, councilors.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a good evening. Thank you.